Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be tuning in from. Jason's caffeinated and ready to go. I am currently coffee bean deficient, but we're going to get through this anyway. So, Jason, you're drinking for two. I just want to set you up in advance right now.
I should have had one in each hand. I could have done that.
A good IT professional always has caffeine nearby. So, this Monday is already off to a rocking start. So this is actually part two of our episode 71, which is getting to be big numbers now, 7-1. But part two, we took a week off for Veeam's 15th birthday, which was also a day of employee time off. So we're very grateful for that, but sorry we missed everyone. Maybe just remind everyone what we've been up to in this series.
So last week we covered or 2 weeks ago, I guess, we talked about use it or lose it, things that you could do now. We got about 7 weeks left, 6 weeks now, left in the fiscal year. And there's a lot of stuff that I'm sure folks are thinking, hey, in 2022, I'm gonna. There's several little things that you could do now to start solving some problems before you get to 2022. It's kind of like, let's say that you want to do a home inspection and you're walking through the house and you're figuring out what's going on. If you see a screw that's a little loose, that's poking out of a wall, if you see a frame that's just a little out of whack, right? You don't finish the home inspection and go back. It's like, hey, let me just fix this while I'm here. There's a couple things that people ought to be fixing while they're here. Dave, the first one, that I love first and foremost is get your data out of the building, right?
Yeah.
There is no reason that cloud should not be part of your data protection strategy in some way. And if you already have accounts with a hyperscaler, light that up, right? Object storage, it's 4 clicks in Veeam and you're off to the races. If you don't, or if you really are looking for better expertise, there's some fantastic BAS and DRAS capabilities out there that are free trial. So go try those. So those are, I guess, steps 1 and 2. What about 3 and 4? What else should we be thinking about sooner than later?
Yeah, I like the Office 365, Microsoft 365 one because, we're still kind of evangelizing this. We've been doing research that shows more and more organizations understand that they need to protect that data. But awareness, never sleeps, and we need to keep evangelizing this. So, yes, Microsoft makes a very resilient platform, but yes, you are still responsible for that data. They may be custodians of it, but you're actually on the hook to make sure that data is well protected and that you've got something that's essentially greater than the recycle bin. So as global deployments of O365, M365 still increasing, we're well into approaching 2 years of the pandemic now, but still Office 365 new users are going up and up. Now's the time to be thinking about that. And then cloud hosted databases. It's almost the same thing, Jason. It's still your data. Maybe it was born in the cloud. Maybe it was shifted to the cloud, but you're still responsible for it.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks just really misunderstand the fact that there's a difference between the native durability or resiliency that the cloud does give us, right? One of the best benefits of SaaS and PaaS architectures is that they are natively durable through those hyperscale hosted infrastructure. That is not the same thing as retaining previous versions of data against ransomware and malware, against intentional and accidental data loss. I mean, there's lots of reasons why the recycle bin, or in Database's case, the undo log, is not enough, right? You still got to back that stuff up along the way. Hey, Dave, before we get into the new things for this week, we're trying something new this week, right? So the quote of the day, right? So what's our topic for quote of the day? And then let's throw a few.
Yeah. So I was probably remiss at the open to not tell everyone, hey, be sure and enter in where you're tuning in from. We'll hit the world map or global map here a couple different times during our chat. But our question of the day, the QOTD, is what's your favorite quote about technology? I know you've actually riffed up a few. Want to share a couple of yours?
Yeah, let me get us started. So some of my favorite quotes I've heard as a technology professional for going on 32 years. Here's my top 5. Did you have plans for this 3-day weekend?
Ouch.
That
rings just too true.
I didn't do any Veeam for any of it, so I think we're past that one for some people. No good deed goes unpunished, right? When was the last time that you modernized production and then you had to retrofit protection that came in behind that. We just talked about that for Office and databases. My favorite thing to see on a Monday morning, especially in IM or in old days text, I have a quick question for you, which almost always goes into a project that you hadn't planned for. And then here's one you might like, Dave. Tape is dead. Turns out the rumor of their demise is still premature. And then lastly, and maybe we're right back to those cloud things again, because I've been hearing this for as long as I've been in IT, we don't need to back that up. Right? Whether it's not in production yet, or maybe it's natively durable or whatever. I hear so many people say, we don't need to back that up. And then later it's like, oh, and that's all you get after that. So,
right.
Anyway, those are my top 5. Hopefully folks will pile on for some others throughout our session.
Yeah, I like that. I had that first one was kind of an Office Space moment, meaning the 3-day weekend. I like that one a lot. 2 that come to my mind are, it's kind of more of a saying, but I guess it's a quote, is software will eventually work and hardware will eventually fail. And so I think that still holds true all these decades later. The other one that's also just cringeworthy is, hey, I hear you're good with computers. I have a computer problem, which is code for there goes the next several hours of my day if I actually do get roped into something. So yeah, there's a lot of things out there. I'd love to hear from everyone else, as well as where you may be tuning in from. Maybe let's take a look now and get a first map update if we've already got one. If one's come in, great. If not, that's all right. So we have, let's see, Colorado, Texas, Georgia, Italy, and Romania as well. Brilliant. And let's see if we can't get a couple more people chiming in where they may be tuning in from. And what your thoughts on the question of the day, meaning a technology quote, might be. So now in this version, meaning session 2 of Use It or Lose It, I can't believe you said it was 6 weeks. I guess it really is just 6 weeks till 2022. So what do we want to focus on now in this installment?
Yeah, so let's go back to how we started the year, right? So when we started the year, our global survey just had its most recent iteration, the Data Protection Trends Report for 2021. And one of the big questions that we ask each year is, what does modern look like, right? So there's so many things in IT that you're trying to get away from. This question really was around, what are people trying to get towards? And it's a little bit of an eye chart, right? It's a little bit busy. And as we talked about before, the long green lines, you could choose more than one. The bright green lines, this is what matters. It's stack ranked by what matters most. And we covered a couple of these last week, right? So we covered DRAS last week. We covered mobility and fluidity of moving workloads from one cloud to another. The first session was all around those cloud-centric modernizations that are out there. But the data center still is so relevant to almost every organization of almost every size. And so I think let's go back and look at that list again as we're leaning into 22, because there are some things that we ought to look at. Most notably, the very first thing on the list is around recovery workloads and orchestration, right? So double data centers from that. We look at things like integrating your backup among other kinds of infrastructure. So systems management frameworks, APIs to do those kinds of tasks. Integrating with cyber, I love the fact that those are adjacent to each other along the line. So I do think that we should take a little bit of time and talk about the fact that there is a lot of great work to be done in the modern data center. And oh, by the way, you don't have to wait for next year's budget for this. These are some easy things that that we should pick up on. And Dave, we talk about the data center and making sure that your backups actually are recoverable. Yeah. I know this is one of your favorite features. You want to unpack recommendation number 1?
Yeah. I really like the notion of Sure Backup as the Veeam technology name. And what it is, it's something actually that Veeam pioneered or was first in the industry to deliver. And over and above just like a heartbeat ping, what we can do is, let's say you've got a specific application, whether it's Active Directory, SQL Server, what have you, we can actually issue commands against, say, SQL Server. We can do some SQL iterators. So we can interrogate, did the data actually properly get captured? Is the application logically consistent? We've mentioned a couple different times and on a few different webinars, Jason, the old joke that you cannot recover that which you did not back up, or you cannot properly recover that which was not properly backed up. So Veeam pioneered this notion around sure backup. It's built upon another technology advancement that we came out with about 11 and a half years ago now, believe it or not, called Data Labs. That's just our instant recovery technology that we've been iterating on now for over a decade. Sure backup is leveraging that instant mount capability that right after we do a backup, while we still have that production data, we can go verify through the Veeam repository, run some commands against that, and understand if we've got good copy or not. If we don't, for some reason, we can still go immediately get a copy of production.
Yeah, and I think when I first learned about this, the thing that was always interesting to me is, so Veeam's architecture, one of the things it was always designed for, every backup solution has always said, it's not about the backup, it's about the restore. Right. But Veeam's technology, the back end of how we store that data actually really does make good on that promise. It's not about how much can you squeeze into a backup repository. It's about how quickly can you invoke a restore command. And so when you do an architecture like that, we can actually bring up the data while it's actually still in the backup storage. We don't have to suck it back down onto a production server someplace. And so the difference between these two capabilities is we bring it up automatically and then automate some tests like, does file exist? Does the OS run? Is there an IP address? Somehow ensure the validity of that recoverable data, right? That's sure backup. We automate it, we bring it up, we test it, we put it back down again. And then what happened is customers said, hey, could you not just turn it off afterwards? Because I'd like to run some stuff while we're there. I'd like to do some data mining. I'd like to run a different cybersecurity check. I want to do some patch testing. I want to upgrade the next version, see if it works. So this really is kind of a yin and a yang, but it's based on this idea of a sandbox that first and foremost assures your recoverability, not just the log of nothing broke, but really can the data stand up? And then secondly, enable you some proactive stuff that comes out of that. I love that as a first premise, because if nothing else, all you're doing is you're ensuring that everything that you're already doing really is being successful.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's fantastic. Let's shall we go into the map and kind of take a look at, or do we have some more quotes of the day to chime in on, Dave?
Yeah, a couple good quotes have come in. Our buddy Tim Myers says, quote, all you have to do is, which of course is preceded, and that goes in front of a 20-minute, drill down into something that is not so simple. Robert brings up, do we really have to test that change? Nice. I actually gave my wife a coffee mug that says, I don't always test, but when I do in production.
All right.
Anastasia says, my favorite one is forget about best practices. It's time to create absolutely new processes. Well, that's a recipe for a calm Monday, if there ever was one, huh? So I
want to hang out more with Anastasia, because I would have thought the other one that I've heard around that is the exact opposites. I've always heard but we've always done it this way.
Oh, yeah.
So,
actually, I kid you not, back in our past lives when we were both industry analysts, I used to sometimes ask people, what's your backup retention? And they would say, oh, well, we keep our nightlies for 5 years. We keep our, weeklies for 7 years. We keep our quarterlies for 10 years. I mean, just some like amazingly long period of time. And I'd say, why do you keep your quarterlies for a decade? I don't know. I've only been here for 2.5 years. That's just what we do.
It's the way that it was when I got here. I can't find anyone to tell me otherwise. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. That's right. And while I was mentioning some of the comments on the quote of the day, I forgot to reference Florida, Massachusetts, Peru, Dubai, United Emirates, and India have come in. So definitely.
It's been a while since we had Peru. All right. Welcome to the party.
Yeah. Oh, and probably our boss in New Hampshire. Give a shout out there. Also, Mark from Mass says, hey, someone's an EVH fan. Yep, guilty as charged. All right. I like this next comment or a bit of advice that you got. Tee up your next one for us, if you would.
Yeah. So to me, this one is ask yourself: is your burger missing fries and a drink? Okay. It is possible. I built this slide just before lunch, and I was thinking about food, but the point here is that if the only thing you're doing is VBR, look, VBR is very, very powerful. It's been our flagship for almost all of our entire 15 years. Veeam backup and replication, you're going to get copies of your stuff, right? And Dave, you're a car nut as well as a musician. Can you imagine taking your high performance car and actually not using the instrumentation on a dashboard? Can you imagine if we just, put a piece of black canvas across that dashboard and said, you just get the feel of it, right? I mean, you can tell, right, a little bit. If you're passing other people, you're going too fast. If you're other people are passing you, then you need to speed up. That's probably more than you need, right? So instrumentation, right? There's value in that. And oh, by the way, almost everybody today, when they buy Veeam, they actually buy the Veeam Availability Suite, which means they have Veeam 1. I'm always surprised by the number of folks that aren't really living by those dashboards, either operationally or strategically, when we look at things like capacity planning. And then similarly to that, and we're going to spend a little bit more time on this, is around orchestration. Remember, we said the number one characteristic in that data protection trend study when organizations were asked, what does modern look like? Modern look like orchestration. And I've used this example before, and I'd love to get your feedback on this as well. So, Dave, this last weekend, I was at a scouting event because that's what I do when I'm not solving the world's backup problems. And when we teach that first aid merit badge, I've used this example before. We teach, the time between snake bite and hospital, right? That length of time affects your ability to survive. And the time between crisis and remediation affects your organization's ability to survive. And so orchestration, its only job is to shrink that time of remediation and increase the consistency, which will therefore increase. This is why we train. This is why we teach. This is why we practice your ability to succeed. So if you're not doing orchestration, if you're not doing instrumentation, then your burger is missing fries and a drink. I got on a soapbox for a second there, Dave. I apologize. What are your thoughts on this, my friend?
No, I like that. And, we could actually tie Veeam 1 and Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator into everything we've been talking about, meaning sure backup or the notion of verification, automated verification more specifically. To your point, that is Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator's only job. It can automatically test for you, and when disaster does hit, it can automatically recover on your behalf. Speaking of disasters, we were kind of chatting earlier this morning, Catronelle and our production team, she was referencing actually an interesting article where the United States Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, if you're from the States, got actually compromised, hacked by external sources. And, it just goes to show anyone is vulnerable. But on the other end of the spectrum, it's not just three-letter government agencies. It could be a very, very small company, could be anywhere in the world, could be any vertical in the world. That's one of the areas where I really like referencing Veeam 1, the analytics dashboard that you mentioned, because Veeam 1 can also give you an early warning indicator about if we've got some kind of anomalous activity. And it's better to have that smoke alarm go off early. To your point about time between notification and remediation, that is exactly what Veeam 1's designed to do, is to alert and help you remediate against any anomalies. I want to give a shout out, by the way, to Ferris on LinkedIn. He says, Veeam's awesome. Very good solution. Best I've ever seen. So thank you for that. Our buddy Tim says, automated verification with documentation and recovery plan. Great point there, Tim. Not only is Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator verifying your recovery plan, it's keeping your documentation up to date, or what we call dynamic documentation, and it's building and verifying your recovery plan. The only thing more criminal, I'd say, Jason, than not having a DR plan is having an out-of-date one, right? So configuration drift is a real problem.
Yeah, hey, I want to talk about that FBI thing though for a second, and then we should make sure to keep talking about the orchestration and some of the things you should be thinking about from that. But that was amazing to me, considering the fact that by compromising the email, I mean, this is kind of like, and I am not the most cyber compared to some of the other operational DR things that I tend to like to focus on. But it was, to me, my first thought was, what an interesting pivot on a supply chain problem.
Hmm.
Because in this case, we all look for in phishing, we look for where did it really come from. They were actually able to send real emails from an authenticated FBI mail source. So if you send an email and say, hey, and you send it to local agencies and said, hey, we are FBI, and the header is right, and it actually is certificate validated, and it says, we think there's a real problem. It's urgent that you click on this link. Right? You've done everything right. You had a signed certificate. You had an authentic sending address from it. Must be valid. Every link that got clicked, I mean, it's like the worst possible scenario for phishing, because you've already solved for potential of relevance.
Yeah, it's a good point. We oftentimes like to say that employee training, or basically scaring employees so they don't click on erroneous links, is something that would help you a great deal. But here, to your point, in this case, you can do everything right and still be gotten. And
Right.
so it all more reason why you just have to assume that eventually, unfortunately, you're probably going to get compromised, just like eventually, unfortunately, a system is going to fail.
Yeah, can you imagine if that same thing had happened from Chase.com? Hey, we think someone compromised your bank account. Click here, and you look and say, hey, it really is from Chase. It really is from J.P. Morgan or Wells Fargo, and you click the link because it really is from them.
Yeah.
And there you are, right? It's one thing when the Nigerian prince offers you $10 million, all you have to do is click here. But it's another thing when your bank or your law enforcement says it's important, you got to click here. All right, but so knowing that that bad things are going to happen. Fire will continue to happen, flood will continue to happen, earthquakes will continue to happen, bad actors will continue to happen even more prevalently. Let's go back to orchestration. So remember, our theme here is use or lose it. If you have not done this, if you are a Veeam customer, when you go into my.veeam.com, when you click on that, if you have even a single, I think it's even a single paid license, if you have anything that gets you into that portal, then you can enable orchestration, testing, automated documentation, all from that single click along the way. Click that. It gets you into the orchestrator project. Again, this is one of those things that November is a great time to do this, because if you start playing with DR with the disaster recovery orchestrator in November, then by January 2nd, you too will understand why that needs to be part of your budget for 2022. Dave, thoughts on this? I mean, we're in a short window here, but this just seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, no, it's really, I don't know, can't think of a good argument about why you would not want to go and investigate this. And again, unfortunately, cyber is all too real. We used to say we only restore 3 to 5% of the data we back up, thankfully, because not that many things went that badly for most of us. Of course,
Right.
We didn't know which 3 to 5% of the data, and we didn't know when that might be. But ransomware now has a potential attack surface of 100% of your environment. Imagine not just bringing back 1 or 2 systems, but bringing back all of your systems. No matter what size company you are, having an automated way to do that, but having the confidence that you've got a verified, vetted plan, that's what you really want to have going for you when bad things hit.
Yeah, and Dave, one of the things that you said in that last thing I think is just so golden that we need to focus on, and that is, doesn't matter what size org you are.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're a small org, then you probably have a small number of servers, but guess what? You also have a very small IT team, right? And that team is not going to be big enough to re-stand up even your small set of servers. And if you are a large enterprise, you have a larger set of servers, you have a larger IT team, you still don't have enough manpower or back knowledge to go stand up all that infrastructure a second time, because all of your primary systems are compromised. So any way you look at it, whatever you can do to orchestrate, this is how that set of servers needs to recover, and then take that recipe, programatize it, I think that's a word, right? Actually provide an orchestrated workflow and then have it test that workflow every time. You're not testing something out of paper, you're testing something out of an engine. It's going to test the same way every time. It's going to generate a report afterwards. Cannot say enough. That said, let's go look at the architecture for Orchestrator, because if you have any money left to spend in 2021 getting ready, I'm telling you, a proof of concept with a Veeam channel partner to get this stood up is money really well spent. I'm going to tell you, with VBR, it just works, and you can get back up running in less than an hour. Orchestrator, it's a very powerful tool, and very powerful tools need some expertise to get it set up. So go get a partner and spend a day or 2 days of consult, get it up and running again, get Orchestrator stood up so that you can start embracing this. Truly, again, money well spent.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And, just to double click on why that might be the case, meaning a little bit more that you need to invest in an automation platform, it's because there's no software that already understands your business logic,
That's
your
right.
business processes. So it truly is very unique for every organization, but it's worth taking the time upfront to have that documented and have that put into an automation engine rather than scrambling at the last moment about trying to put that into place. So with there, I know we've got one more bit of research data that we want to tee up. Questions to ask before 2022. Take us through this one. In this reality gap, I basically always think of you whenever I think of that phrase reality gap.
That's because I have a limited set of expectations around reality. Look, as you're getting into the new year, right? So we're having those end of year conference meetings. We're having our planning. Most people are starting to lock down their budgets. Really, at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself two questions. And what you really want to do is you want to get your business stakeholders, those folks that depend on the data, in one room, and then your technology folks in another room. And you're asking them both the same question. The first question is, you're asking the business leaders, how long can business continue to operate if the IT systems were to go down? And if should really be when, right? Because it's going to happen. So ask yourself, how long can you be down and still do business? Then go ask the IT folks, how long will it take you to get back up again? And if you're like the 2,800 organizations represented on this slide, 80% of you, 4 out of 5 organizations, will find there is a gap between how quickly you need the systems to come back online and how quickly IT can actually do it. That's the top part. The bottom is even simpler. The bottom part says, hey, when we finally get back up and running again, we assume we're going to lose some data, right? We're going to have to roll back to something. How much data could we afford to lose? And when you ask the IT folks that bottom question, how much data can we afford to lose? Then go ask IT and they say, well, we only back up once a night. We only back up every couple of days, right? There's a gap. And 3 out of 4, 76% of you will find there's a gap between how much data you can afford to lose and how frequently IT protects. That's why our product is not Veeam backup and recovery. It's Veeam backup and replication, because you need replication and snapshotting as a complement to backup along the way. But ask yourself those two questions: downtime and data loss. What really matters to the business? Those are the questions you should have now so that you can have a better 22 than a 2020.
Yeah, well said. And now we come to the close of now our second session in the series. Let's do a quick recap. And while we're bringing up that slide, Thierry says, what you see is what you get, Veeam team. Best regards to Wolf. Best regards, Testa GTO, the Wolf Plumber INF, which you probably know what that means, Jason, but I like it. And so let's go to the recap slide.
GTO, just saying, but yeah.
Here
so
we've got
here's the last
7
thing.
key
So
things, right?
you're for use or lose it. The top one, every organization, whether you're a cloudy, whether you're all on data center, cloud repositories work in both cases, right? So get your data out of the operating environment, out of host number 1, out of your data center number 2, whatever. Get it someplace else. On the cloud, try DRaaS. There's a lot of DRaaS providers that are out there for free. Get going on that. Complement Office 365 with protecting those mailboxes, and complement those databases. Back that up because the cloud provider isn't. On the data center side, Dave?
Yeah, and on the data center side, this notion of sure backup, a component of data labs or something that leverages data labs, verify your backups, make sure that you've captured the data correctly, enabling monitoring and alerting. And then to Jason's point, try orchestration. Veeam 1 really can be your friend. Veeam Disaster Recovery Orchestrator can really, really be your friend as well. You owe it in this little cycle of maybe a month and a half before we get into the next new year to try some of these capabilities if you never have, or if you have, make sure you're deploying them to the fullest extent. So as we begin to wrap up, do want to give a shout out coming up this Friday. Our buddies Rick Vanover and Corinne Bissett, they're going to be covering Microsoft 365 and Azure tips and tricks. And even if you're watching this on replay on one of the various platforms we broadcast or now TriCast on, please do put your quotes in there for your favorite quote as it relates to technology and where you're tuning in from. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, stay positive, and we'll see you on the next live stream.